This video will provide some tips on operating the Magica clock. The first item is removal of the back cover. The back cover of the clock is held on by a couple of magnets, and when it's removed, that exposes the battery compartment. The clock is operated by 4 AA alkaline batteries, and I'm going to insert them now. There's no on-off switch for the clock, so if you want to stop the clock, you need to remove one or all of the batteries. The back cover, one side is marked top. That needs to go up because it's not interchangeable. Once you've inserted the batteries, you just give the pendulum a gentle click or a gentle push, and that's all there is to starting the clock. Next, let's cover setting the time. The time is set by turning this gear. Right now the clock is reading going on 3:30, let's say, or 2:30. Let's say the correct time is 3 o'clock. To set the time, we need to turn that gear until it reads the correct time. And that's it. That's how you set the time, turning this gear. Some things to remember are, do not try to set the time by directly pushing on the hands of the clock, and don't try to set the time by moving any of the other gears. The gear to move to set the clock is this gear right here. Now let's cover clock speed. The speed of the clock is governed by the effective length of the pendulum. If the clock is running slow and needs to be sped up, then you need to shorten the pendulum. If the clock is running fast and you need to slow it down, then you need to lengthen the pendulum. Now, the pendulum, it consists of the pendulum stick and this bob, and the bob moves up and down on the stick. The position of the bob is governed by this nut on this screw post at the bottom of the pendulum. If you need to lengthen the pendulum because you want to slow the clock down, screw the nut on the post like this, moving the nut down and thereby increasing the effective length of the pendulum. On the other hand, if the clock is running too slow and you need to speed it up, then you turn the nut so as to raise it on the screw post, thereby effectively shortening the pendulum, and that will speed the clock up. Now, as you zero in on the correct position of the pendulum, very small adjustments in the nut are all that's required. Just a half a turn or even a quarter turn may be enough to make a change to get to the exact correct length for the pendulum. Keep in mind that the wooden clock is affected by temperature and humidity, so you're not going to have a precise timekeeping piece here, but you will be able to get it pretty close. Another topic I'd like to cover is coordination of the minute and hour hands. They have been coordinated in the factory, and this is an adjustment you may never have to do. But if the coordination of the hands gets out of whack, it's a simple procedure to get it straight again. You notice right now the clock is reading oddly. It's the top of the hour, but the hour hand is kind of pointed in the middle, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly what time it is. This is a situation where the hands have gotten out of coordination. Suppose the actual time is 3 o'clock. The way to fix this is hold this gear and just move manually the hour hand to the correct position. I'm going to get the minute hand directly up, pointing to the this brass rod end. So that's the top of the hour. And then I'm fixing the hour hand to point directly at the 3. I did that by holding this gear fixed and then moving the hour hand manually on the axle, on the brass axle. And now the hands are coordinated. And as the clock goes through the day, they'll stay coordinated. If it ever gets out of whack again, just move the minute hand to the top of the hour and set the hour hand so that it points directly to one of the hours. And then they'll be back in coordination. Okay, now I'd like to discuss the set screws. Included in your Magica clock toolkit is this small Allen wrench. The clock has 2 set screws. A set screw that is toward the back of the clock, behind the dial face plane, is a set screw that's been tightened down at the factory, and is a set screw that you'll never have to give attention to. The second set screw is up here in front, which is just in front of the plane of the clock dial. And this set screw is a little special. Between the screw and the brass shaft is a nylon bearing that allows this gear to slip whenever you change the time. If there comes a time when your minute hand sort of hangs loosely, that means that this set screw needs to be retightened. And to retighten it, you just insert the Allen wrench and give the set screw maybe a quarter of a turn just to firm up the connection of the this gear to the axle, and that will bring the hour hand back into correct operation. As the clock comes from the factory, it's set up to sit on a table. But a optional feature of the clock is its ability to be hung on a wall. Included in your clock toolkit is this optional wall hanging bracket, which is going to be attached down here. I'll show you how to do that. As well as 2 number 10 wood screws. Now when you go to hang the clock on the wall, you'll put the 2 screws in the wall in this fashion. This board is simulating the wall. The screws need to be 11 and 13/16 inches apart. And they need to be perfectly plumb vertically from one another. And you'll do that with a level. It's important that you use a level and not just eyeball it, because it has to be perfectly plumb. Another thing that you'll want to do is set the screw head, the back of the screw head, so that it is just a ½ inch from the wall. Maybe just slightly more than a ½ inch from the wall. So those are the critical dimensions. 11 and 13/16 inches between the 2 screws, a little more than a ½ inch protrusion from the wall to the bottom of the screw head, and make sure that the 2 screws are perfectly plumb to one another. The clock, we're going to remove the back, stow this away because it's not used in wall hanging mode. And what we want to do is take this screw out of the clock. It's holding this foot piece on, and we're going to replace this foot piece with this piece. So here I go. Remove the screw. We're going to use it to attach this. Now it doesn't fall off, it has to be pulled off of that pin. When you're putting this piece on, make sure the countersunk part of the hole is on the outside, the flat is on the inside. And that goes on the pin. Then we attach this wall hanging piece. The way this works is these two holes will be placed over the screws that are in the wall and will hold it on the wall. Now I'm going to stick that over there. Uh-oh. I must have given you the wrong dimension. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, we're back in business. Turned out the dimension I gave you is correct. It's supposed to be 11 and 13/16. The problem was I put it at 10 and 13/16. Now I've corrected that. So now they are actually 11 and 13/16 inches apart. We're going to put these two holes over the screws, and then we'll press it down about a ½ inch so that the screw heads go into those indentations. And there we go. Now if you get a little wobble like that, that means the screws should be tightened a little closer to the wall so that it will hug it to the wall tightly. And then you have a wall hung Magica clock.